you can take the leg off and you can maybe get a year if you're really lucky, but probably only like 6 months if you don't do chemotherapy and actually treat the cancer. But you'll be treating the pain and your dog will have a better quality of life if you get rid of that leg with the tumor. And we couldn't believe that. We were like, how can a dog be happy on 3 legs?
If you're facing the difficult prospect of amputating your pet's leg, or if they've already had that procedure done and they're starting life on 3 legs as a tripod, then Rene and Jim are 2 people you definitely want in your corner. And I'm really excited today to be bringing you their story about what brought them into the world of 3-legged pets and amputation, their advice to help you make this often very difficult decision, as well as their top tips to make sure that your 3-legged pet is living their best life possible.
Welcome to the Call the Vet Show, the podcast that helps keep your furry family as healthy as possible so they can live the full and happy life they deserve. And here's your host, veterinarian Dr. Alex Avery.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Call the Vet Show. If you don't know already, if you've not listened before, then welcome along. And this is the podcast where I give you the information that you need to help you optimize your pet's health so that they can live the full and happy life that they deserve. Now, in some podcast episodes, I'm answering your questions. And if you do have a question for the show that you'd like answered on an upcoming episode, you can get that answered at callthevet.org. But as well as answering your questions, I dive deep into certain topics that I think are really important for all pet owners to know. And I also am starting to bring you interviews with experts, other experts and passionate members of the pet health community. And that is what today's episode is all about. I'm talking to Rene and Jim. They are the founders of Tripawds, which is a community that brings together a lot of different information, a lot of different experiences about pets living with an amputation. So our 3-legged pet community. Unfortunately, the decision to amputate your dog or cat's leg is often one that needs to be made pretty quickly. And that could be because they've been diagnosed with a particularly aggressive type of cancer, or it could be that they've had a really nasty accident and they've done some really terrible injuries to their leg, which means that it can't be saved. So while you may not think that this episode applies to you, if your pet has got 4 legs, I really would encourage you to listen to Rene and Jim, listen to their excellent advice, because you never quite know when this information may prove absolutely vital. On top of that, they're just fantastic people. And one of the great joys that I experienced by doing this podcast and being in the online world, if you like, is being able to connect with such dedicated and passionate people, as you'll see that they are. The other thing that I love is the fact that I can have these conversations when I'm the other side of the world from my guest. And that was absolutely the case in this episode, as Rene and Jim are in the United States. Unfortunately, Zoom was playing up a little bit. I don't think that detracts at all from our conversation, and there was a little bit of background noise, so you'll have to excuse that. But that's it from me. Let's get into today's episode. Rene and Jim, welcome to the show. Really excited to have you on today.
Thank you. It's great to be here. We're really
excited to be here.
To this.
Thank you very much.
Perfect. So I should explain, and I will go. I've mentioned this in the interview already, but there is a bit of a leaf blower going on in the background. But they'll be coming and going. But let's jump into our fantastic chat. So you guys run this amazing community online for pets and pet parents who have dealt or are dealing with the prospect of an amputation, and you know it's a very specific niche, and you've got a fantastic and a bittersweet backstory about how you got into that, which I think really highlights the importance of the work that you do. So I wondered if you wanted to tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you got into the work that you're doing.
Yeah. First of all, thank you very much for calling it amazing. And it's not overnight. We've been doing this 13 years
Since
now.
2006.
So how did we get started?
So here's what happened. We had a dog. He was our first dog, love of our life, named Jerry. And he was super active, German Shepherd mix, great dog. Used to go hiking with us and running and camping and very outdoorsy. And one day we came home from a backpacking trip, and he jumped out of the back of the truck and yelped. And we were like, whoa, what's this all about? A few weeks go by, the limp gets worse. And we take him to the vet. The vet doesn't really know what to make of it, but says, well, he's 8 years old. He's probably got some arthritis. So this went on for a few weeks, and we could not figure out what was going on until one day Jim was massaging him, trying to just palpate around his body to figure out why, what was that? What was that limp? And Jerry let out a yelp when Jim touched his scapula. Fast forward, we found out he had osteosarcoma.
After a second and third opinion, a vet tech at the first vet who kind of refused to say, I don't know, encouraged us to get a second opinion, which we always encourage to people to do if there's any question whatsoever. And that vet was, said, I don't know, but it looks odd. You should go to UC Davis, which is one of the best teaching hospitals in the nation here. So we did, and they did the MRI, and there was a large tumor in the scapula growing inwards, so we couldn't really see it, but it was really starting to cause pain on the inside.
And the whole experience kind of threw us into the world of cancer and dogs and veterinary medicine, really, because we had no experience with it at all. We didn't even know that dogs got cancer at the time. Jerry had always been a healthy puppy and never had any issues. So this was like, whoa, trial by fire.
There wasn't exactly the resources available online. So we thought we might not go through with it, and then we saw on YouTube a giant Great Dane digging up a gopher with one front leg, and thought, if that dog can do it, our dog's half the size, he'll be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Because as cancer diagnosis goes, osteosarcoma is up there as the worst, or one of the worst, by no means. So did you get a lot of good guidance from the vets and from the team at UC Davis, or was it a little bit like, well, we kind of left in the dark, and so that's what led to the creation of Tripawds?
Well, what happened was they were pretty matter of fact, and they said you can take the leg off and you can maybe get a year if you're really lucky, but probably only like 6 months if you don't do chemotherapy and actually treat the cancer. But you'll be treating the pain, and your dog will have a better quality of life if you get rid of that leg with the tumor. And we couldn't believe that. We were like, how can a dog be happy on 3 legs? We had never seen a 3-legged dog in our lives. So they presented us with very clinical information, and they were very honest. And as you know, vets see 3-legged pets all the time. It's not a big deal. But to us, as the pet parent, it just came as such a shock. So when we did find that dog on YouTube who was digging with one front leg, that kind of gave us the confidence to pursue amputation. But we still kind of felt like oddballs, We were like, are we those weird people who will just go to the ends of the earth for their animal? And it just didn't feel natural at the time.
But they did give us plenty of options. They're a teaching institution. They gave us all of the options we could do with or without chemo. And that's when I first started hearing them refer to a 3-legged dog as a tripod, like POD. And I went home and decided to register the domain Tripawds with a paw in the middle to kind of take that back and empower the name for those people that think, my dog's awesome on 3 legs. So we, when faced with this news, we were at a place in our life where it was, we're operating a business, and Jerry was what we called our chief fun officer. And we owed it to him to kind of ride out the rest of our time together the best we possibly could. And Rene had this crazy idea one day and said, we should sell the business, sell the home, and buy an RV and travel with Jerry. He's only got, 6 to 10 months to live, they say. And we did that. We quickly sold. We were on the road at the 6-month point or so. And he ended up living 2 years. And this was without chemotherapy, and it was 97. So
2007.
2007. It was a long time ago.
We have to check each other every now and then. We share our brain. But it wasn't, it was still a big deal to us to have a 3-legged dog. We just, we didn't feel like it was a natural thing. So we started writing about it because both of us are writers at heart. And when we started this little blog on Tripawds, people started contacting us, asking questions about their own animals' amputation, whether they were just presented with the news that their animal had to lose a leg or they'd been dealing with it for a while. But what they were looking for was some sense of community, that they weren't alone. And then suddenly we realized we're not alone either. And the light bulb kind of went on, and Jim put discussion forums on the website. And that's when it really grew, because we could all talk to each other and share our experiences. And suddenly it occurred to us that it was that sharing of information that was really helpful to people who were going through this, because a lot of times you're dealing with a cancer diagnosis. It is usually a pretty grim prognosis. Yeah. And we just thought, why not make that time as great as possible? And our current dog Wyatt just kicked the table. So sorry about that. Real life
but
here.
This first year on the road with Jerry, I just wanted to share the world and take videos and show him running and playing. And we didn't know a thing about rehab or
injury prevention,
the altered stance and the altered gait. And we were throwing frisbee on the beach with him. Yeah. And the more and more we learned and talked to veterinarians and heard the stories of all the people in our community, our shift kind of turned to providing qualified information from verifiable sources.
I'm a journalist by trade, and Jim is too. He comes from a writing background, and so we didn't want to put bad information out there or just anecdotal stuff. We really wanted to make sure that if we were going to have a presence on the internet and share this experience with others, that information that we put out had to be qualified, good stuff. So that's when we really turned to people like yourself and just started asking a lot of questions and sharing it with the community. And it's been a learning experience for us ever since.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess community, from thinking from a veterinary point of view, we can be very matter of fact. Like you say, we're seeing these things on thankfully not a massively regular basis in the terms of osteosarcoma and amputation, but it is something that we're, very experienced with, and it causes all kinds of issues and emotions to an owner. And so we maybe, I guess, not lose the human aspect of things, but we can come across as maybe very matter of fact and, very fact based without considering that emotional component. So that's where it's fantastic that there is the community that you guys provide. And I'm sure you've had people from all walks of life reaching out to you. When it comes to people deciding to amputate, I guess one thing that I see a lot more of for reasons is actually trauma and really nasty traumatic injuries rather than cancer. And maybe that's the dog population and the breeds involved. But are you finding that as well? Are you getting that really mixed bag, or does cancer seem to be the predominant cause?
Actually for us, cancer is the number one reason people join us, and it's closely followed by accidents and trauma though. So we do see a lot of cancer situations and a wide range of cancers. I mean, not just dogs. We see cats with osteosarcoma, which really isn't supposed to happen. I mean, it's rare, but we see it all the time in our community because it's such a small little corner of the parenting world.
Well, we've seen them all. Everything from snake bites and, accidents and car traumas, but horses kicking them, dogs getting shot.
Cats getting stuck in bed springs. Oh, my gosh.
Small dogs getting stepped on. So people find us for a number of reasons, but we have no judgment and don't say we're not pro-amputation and we're not anti-amputation. We like to present all of the facts and make sure that there's, enough information there for people to do their homework and make an educated decision.
And work with their veterinarians. That's the number one thing. We like to provide a framework of questions that they can talk to their vet about, rather than telling them, well, we think you should do this, because we would never do that. Everybody's different. So we give them things to think about and go back to take to their vet and discuss. And, one of the biggest compliments that we can ever receive is when a veterinarian has an experience with one of our members and they turn around and refer another client of theirs to us. So it's such a huge honor when that happens.
Some people do, unfortunately, the majority of people find Tripawds after the fact. So there's not a lot of preparation. They come home with a bag of medicine and some discharge papers, and they Google and they find people who understand what they're going through. And we like to say we kind of save you veterinarians the time spent answering those emotional questions. The fact that your dog may not poop for 24 to 48 hours, we all know that now. We didn't know that when, our dog had an amputation, but they don't necessarily need to pick up the phone every single time something happens.
Yeah. And with people that are finding you before the event, maybe they're exploring their options, what do you find are their biggest concerns when it comes to amputation? Is it because they're not seeing it? They're worried about their dog's quality of life afterwards? Why are they struggling to make that decision?
It all comes down to they're worried about quality of life. It's kind of a toss-up between that and if I'm going to amputate, but my pet has cancer and they're only given a 1-year prognosis, is it going to be worth it for me to put them through that? And we have been able to answer that question by doing surveys through the years. We take members' experiences, they fill out a questionnaire, and we call it our quality of life survey. And every single time we've done one, only maybe 2 or 3 people out of 200 or so who've answered the surveys have said that they would not do it again, even if they only had a few months of time left with their animal. And they all say they did it, and they were glad they did it because they had a really nice quality of life and a much better way to say goodbye to the animal than they would have if they had to make that decision under duress.
It's that quality of life that is really most important. And a lot of people don't understand until they talk to the people in our forums and get a grip on it. They all think, how long does my dog have? Well, okay, your dog may only have 4 to 6 months, but he's going to be in excruciating pain. You could, the amputation won't get rid of the cancer, but it will get rid of the pain. And your recovery pain could last 10 to 14 days. And then it's just a matter of doing some rehab and getting back to the new normal. So we like to tell people it's not about quantity of life, it's about quality.
And that's absolutely the case when it comes to any kind of cancer treatment that we give as vets, where it's all about quality. We don't go for the big doses of chemotherapy and the big remission, aim that we do in people. So that's, I guess, another fear that I hear a lot when we talk about chemotherapy, that we think hair falling out, vomiting, diarrhea, being an absolute mess. And that's not our aim. It's all about quality of life, which is, what I'm a massive proponent of. So, I guess your advice would be then, if there's no other option, then absolutely jump into that decision, and amputation is going to be beneficial. Is there anything else you'd share with people if they're still struggling?
In the decision part, a lot of people come to us, or a lot of couples come to us rather, where one of the spouses is all against it and the other one's for it. Usually women join our forums and say, my husband's all against it. And it's kind of a macho thing with some guys out there. They couldn't, I wouldn't do that to my dog kind of thing. And the majority of times we ask, encourage him to sit down with you and watch some of these videos, jump on one of our live webinars and just kind of hear the facts, or download one of the ebooks and see, do your homework. Don't just think how bad it may be. And it's not worse. It's different. It's a new normal.
That's exactly what it is. It's a new normal. And it just requires a little bit of rethinking about your dog's daily activities, or your cat's, and what they need to look like in order to preserve that quality of life and make sure that your new tripod doesn't get injured after losing a leg, because they do tend to be a little more prone to injury after, if you let them overdo it. And we know that from experience. It happened to us with our dog Jerry.
So that segues in really nicely into optimizing our quality of life for our dogs and cats that have had to have an amputation. So what are your top tips for that? Because they absolutely can live a really full life, can't they?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And the number one thing that you can do to help your tripod be strong and healthy and happy is to watch their weight.
Yeah.
And time again, we've talked to veterinarians, and we have seen the results of animals who have lost weight after amputation when they needed to lose a few pounds, and what an incredible difference it makes in their mobility. We have a ton of weight loss success stories. That's the number one thing, especially when you're really feeling sorry for your pet and you just want to cuddle them and give them lots of treats because you feel bad they lost a leg. Don't do it. Or give them carrots or peas or something, but don't give them heavy calorie foods. So keeping the weight down.
It's so true. We've interviewed numerous veterinarians at conferences and such, and the number one thing they all agree on is weight management. And the second is never underestimating, proper rehabilitation.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there are still vets out there who say, oh, go let him be a dog, he'll be fine. Yeah. And you get a lot of that on social media.
Cats are completely disregarded when it comes to rehab therapy after amputation, but it really benefits both of them. Both species can get a lot of really good things out of rehab, but most importantly, it's for the pet parent education. So
because people aren't aware that, a walk isn't exactly a strengthening exercise.
Yeah.
And they wonder why their dog's sitting down when, after a short walk, when he's got a missing leg. So we encourage people to consult with certified professionals. So we're so into that our Tripawds Foundation will pay for the first consultation of anyone who takes a three-legged animal to see a CCRT or a CCRP, or an ACV is another one, certified rehab therapists, to get exercises they can do at home to work on core strengthening and proprioception and all these things that none of us know about until it happens to our dogs.
Yeah, and you're right that that helps build up muscles, it strengthens ligaments, and it helps, I guess, ultimately protect the remaining limb from injury, because that's the biggest thing. And then as far as exercise goes, what kind of activities do you think are the best thing that a tripod can do, and which ones should they absolutely be avoiding?
So Rene's interviewed a number of rehab therapists over the years, so we're kind of speaking from experience there. But the most detrimental exercise is what they call explosive exercises. Yeah. The fetch it, the chuck it, the frisbee, the fly ball, dock diving, those kind of things where they're springing off of those remaining limbs. That's not necessarily favorable.
And it really... It also kind of depends on the dog or the cat. Just what is their pre-amputation fitness level like? Because we do have members who were professional hunting dogs before they lost a leg. So we really, really want people to watch that activity and rethink what fun means to your pet. Fun doesn't have to mean running around the dog park for an hour and getting so exhausted they fall down. Yeah. Rethink what fun means. To a lot of pets, a brain game is a lot more fun than throwing a ball. Food puzzles are so great for tripods. Feed them their meals that way instead of just throwing them in a bowl. Yeah. Anything that works their brain over their body is super beneficial. You want to do both, but strike that careful balance. And again, the way to learn how to do that is to work with a professional who understands the needs of your pet.
Yeah. And again, it comes back to adapting to that new normal. Every single dog is different. Every cat's case is going to be different, but their life does need to adapt. They have muscle groups that need to reposition and compensate for the missing limb. So one of the biggest steps we tell people, and that we've heard, is that shorter, more frequent walks throughout the day are much better than 1 or 2 long walks a day, especially when it comes to a new amputee animal.
Yeah. I guess a lot of those points, just as you were going through them, actually, they're ones that are fantastic advice for any dog owner. That mental stimulation is huge, and all too often they're left at home with not a lot to do and nothing to stimulate them, and we get all kinds of behavioral problems, for example. And I know in our older dogs, a lot of the arthritis vets, canine arthritis management is one particular community. They're advocating get rid of that ball chucker, don't do any of those exercises, because the stress and strains, you're absolutely right, that puts through the joint is immense compared to other types of exercise. So yeah, I guess maybe our tripods aren't all that different after all, but we just need to be really, mindful, because the consequences of injury to the remaining leg, can potentially be quite catastrophic, can't they? So,
exactly.
Yeah, fantastic. So that's some amazing information and advice there. You've clearly got a huge amount of knowledge and experience to share on the blog and in your communities and things, but you've written a number of guides and other resources. So would you like to tell everyone a little bit about that if they want to dive into this in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, absolutely.
Certainly. There's a vast amount of resources available at Tripawds, and we host 1,500 three-legged dog and cat blogs and thousands of discussion forum topics. And to save people the time spent searching and surfing and trying to find all the available information that is there for free, we developed ebooks early on, one of them which was called 3 Legs and Despair. It's a canine amputation handbook for the pet owner. It goes through, making the decision to amputate, during amputation, after amputation, recovery, and it's kind of a basics guide on, how to cope with amputation, recovery, and care before, during, and after. And we have just now recently launched a 4th edition, new and improved ebook filled with direct links to videos and podcast interviews and forum topics and articles we've written. But now it's now available on Amazon for Kindle and in paperback in a stripped down basics version. It's more affordable and covers all the basics It's our Tripod Basics series. That's 3 legs and a spare. The second one was Loving Life on 3 Legs. That's more focused on rehab and fitness. And then we
also have cool tips for tripod cats.
Can't forget the cats.
Yes, we have a book dedicated solely to feline amputation and care after surgery. So that's one of my favorites.
Yeah. And then late last year, we published the story about how it all began. Be More Dog, that's Jerry. And it's kind of the lessons we learned from Jerry when we hit the road in an RV, resilience, adaptation, awareness, acceptance, perseverance, those sort of things. And it gets into how and why we developed the Tripawds community, which we're still running.
But more importantly, it's about how to follow your pet's lead in this situation, because they handle it way better than you think they will, and way better than people do. So we wanted to share that message.
I mean, they're so adaptable. I mean, I think you're aware I've had my own tripod as well. So Stella, my cat, she was a stray that was brought to the clinic, and she had some horrendous injuries to one of her front legs and lost her leg, and we tried to rehome her, and of course vets and nurses are always inundated with strays and things, so she ended up coming home, and she had she had and continues to have a fantastic life. So I'd echo that. It's amazing how adaptable our pets are, and like you said at the beginning, the recovery from surgery is actually incredibly rapid, and they just get on with it, don't they? Rene and Jim, thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks for taking the time to share your expertise. I'll obviously be leaving all of those links in the show notes of the podcast for people to explore what you have to offer. They could spend weeks in there, and there'll be time well spent. So thanks so much for everything you do, and take care of yourselves. Now, the thing that I love about Rene and Jim is that they're such passionate advocates that pets with 3 legs can live happy and otherwise healthy lives. They're also fantastic support for any pet parent in that really difficult decision of deciding to amputate in the first place, or having to live with the consequences of that decision. And they're just fantastic people all round, as I'm sure you'll agree. Make sure you check out all of those resources that were mentioned during that conversation, and I'll include those in the show notes. We also talked a lot about the importance of a healthy weight, and that really is something that's important for any pet, regardless of how many legs they have. And it's also one of the main things that I talk about in my free guide, Pet Health Essentials, which you can get at ourpetshealth.com/petcareguide. And again, that link will be in the show notes. Now, if you have enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could share it with your pet owning friends and family, especially if you know someone who does have a tripod. But also, I'd really appreciate it so much if you could head over to iTunes and leave a review for the show. It means so much when I get those reviews through, and it helps more than you can imagine with other pet parents finding this podcast, and that ultimately allows me to help more pets live the life that they deserve. So that's it from me for this week. I hope you stay safe and stay well. But until next time, this is the Call the Vet Show. I'm Dr. Alex. Take care.
Thanks for listening to Call the Vet. For full show notes and any links mentioned in today's show, head over to callthevet.org, where you can also submit your question to be featured on an upcoming episode. We'll see you next time.